For more, we can turn to Mike Kaplan, meteorologist with Fox 32 Television in Chicago. Thank you for speaking with us here on France 24.
My pleasure, and I'm glad to be inside where it's warmer than it is outside.
I was going to say, if this was a comedy routine, I would say, how cold is it?
We had a record low this morning that got down to minus 23 Fahrenheit, which is about minus 31 Celsius. And it is one of the coldest days ever in Chicago. The all time record for Chicago is 27 degrees below zero. That happened back in January of 1985. So we're only 4 degrees away from that. But as you know, the other factor is the wind chill. How it really feels to people when they're outside of this. And we saw wind chills this morning that were about minus 50 to minus 55. And those sort of temperatures, skin can freeze in only 5 to 10 minutes and you get frostbite. So it's been very dangerous. Very few people are outside, I can tell you that. Traffic was virtually non existent today. Schools have been closed, a lot of businesses closed. So everybody, I think, is hunkering down and staying in their homes as much as possible.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you get from place to place when it's this cold? What did you do personally this morning to get to work?
Well, I'm lucky. I have a car and a garage, and then at the television station where I work, we also have a garage. So my entire commute, I was inside my car and just kept looking at the thermometer inside my car, going -8, -10, -12. It kept getting colder as I got into downtown Chicago. Most cars are going to work fine in this. Some of the older cars are cars that have been left out all night long. There have been a lot of reports of cars not starting because of the extreme cold, but the roads are in very good shape. We've had a lot of snow in Chicago this month, especially in the past couple of weeks. We've had snow, at least a little bit of snow, every day for the past 2 weeks, 14 days in a row of snow. And we've had about a foot and a half for the month. So there's been a lot of snow that had to be cleared off the roads, but the people that drive the snow plows have done an excellent job, and most of the roads are in really good shape. So as long as you have functioning heat in the car, you can get where you need to go.
So, Mike, explain this to us, because obviously, there being snow and wind in Chicago in the winter, in and of itself, is not a story. But this polar vortex, it's doing something that's a little unusual. It's the second year in a row, right? We've had this kind of extreme cold.
Well, first of all, you have to understand the polar vortex is a permanent feature in the atmosphere. It's more intense in the winter than it is in the summertime. It is a permanent belt of winds that goes fairly close to the pole. In the northern pole, it's operating counterclockwise if you were looking down on it. The polar vortex more or less governs where the extreme cold temperatures are. When we dislodge a little piece of that polar vortex, and some of that vortex starts to come farther south towards the equator, that's when we get these very, very intense cold outbreaks. Sometimes the polar vortex is displaced more towards Europe or northern Asia, Siberia, into Scandinavia, and even in France, for example. In the past few days, the polar vortex has been dislodged through Canada and now is moving through a big portion of the United States. And some of the coldest air relative to what would be normal conditions is right in Chicago. We don't have the coldest air, but if you compared our temperatures versus what we usually have this time of year,
And
anywhere else in
why
North
is that?
America,
Why is that air being dislodged, that mass of air?
in part because of an event called stratospheric warming. We have two main layers of the atmosphere where weather takes place. The main layer is the troposphere. That's the lowest layer. It goes up to about 7 miles high. The next highest layer of the atmosphere is the stratosphere. And occasionally, especially in wintertime, the stratosphere will get a sudden warming that will take place. That can force changes in the intensity and flow of that polar vortex. And that's what causes a change in the jet stream pattern and will allow some of that colder air to come a little bit farther to the south. So a few weeks ago, we had one of these, we call them an SSW, sudden stratospheric warming event. and that has enabled the polar vortex to be disrupted.
Now, normally you wouldn't think that the weather is political, but on Tuesday there was a tweet by the US President Donald Trump saying in the beautiful Midwest, wind chill temperatures are reaching minus 60 degrees, the coldest ever recorded. In coming days, expect to get even colder. People can't last outside even for minutes. What the hell is going on with global warming? Please come back fast. We need you. A quip which did not amuse some of the climate scientists that we spoke to earlier, saying
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, saying that, the fact is that these cases of extreme weather, you can definitely point the link to it being because of the way humanity burns fossil fuels, for instance. And Donald Trump's track record of walking away from the Paris climate change deal makes it that that's not a very funny joke.
I can understand why people aren't amused by that. What I'll say is that in my profession, when I'm talking about the weather, which is short-term weather events, I try not to link any individual thing that's going on to climate. For example, in 1985, when we had the coldest temperature ever in Chicago, minus 27, nobody was talking about climate change then. It was simply, hey, that is extremely cold weather. So I don't like to say, well, the reason why it's 23 below today is because of climate change. If you look at a whole host of weather events and try and lump them together and put them into something, hey, because we have seen an uptick in the global temperature, we can expect to see more things like this. That's a stronger argument than saying the reason why it's so cold outside right now is because of global warming. That's, I think, a very tenuous argument.
I want to thank you so much for joining us there. Mike Kaplan of TV station Fox 32 in Chicago. Thank you for speaking with us from Chicago's Stay Warm.
Will do. Thank you very much for having me.